Hi, everyone. Angela Alston with Angela Alston Astrology. And today we're going to be looking at the creative potential of the week of August 27th through September 2nd. So let me share my screen. There it is. It looks like it's up. Okay, well, let's get into it. This week, we have the sun established now in Virgo, traveling from the 3.46, so that's 3 degrees, 46 minutes to 10 degrees, 32 minutes, Virgo. So the first third of it. The moon is starting at 10:40 Capricorn, traveling through 25:16 Aries. And now I've taken the times for this week. I've changed it a little bit. Now I'm looking at from 12:01 a.m. on the 27th through 11:59 p.m. on September 2nd. So the fullness of the week. That's what's reflected in these degree ranges. Mercury in Virgo is re-traveling because Virgo is, of course, retrograde now from 21:16 to 16:39 Virgo. Venus in Leo is re-traveling 13:24 to 12:12, and at the very end of the week, Venus is going to be stationing direct, and that should have a positive effect. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get there. Mars is in Virgo, traveling from beginning the week at the anaretic degree, a fated degree. We talked about that last week a little bit, and entering Libra this week, where it will be traveling to 4 degrees 19 minutes of Libra. And we'll spend a little time talking about Mars in Libra. Jupiter is in Taurus, traveling, inching along, right, from 15:28 to 15:34. And Saturn is also retrograde in Pisces, re-traveling from 3 degrees 50 minutes to 3 degrees 18 minutes. So this week we have 3 planets that are retrograde, and none of the planets, because of the retrograde and dignities, none of the planets are in a particularly powerful spot this week. But 4 things that I want to talk about with you are Mars entering Libra, and here we have Freddie Mercury, who is Sun Virgo, Mars in Libra. So a great sort of epitome of this time. Mercury trining Jupiter, but Mercury being combust and retrograde. So the trine may not live up to its reputation. Venus still applying to square Jupiter, but this week at the very end, we have Venus stationing direct, and that's an important moment in her retrograde cycle. And then we still have the sun in opposition to Saturn. Now it perfects very early on the 27th. And so this week, it's going to be a waning influence instead of a waxing influence. but it'll still be present, and we'll still be kind of dealing with some of that sun in opposition to Saturn. We talked about that last week, but we'll hit on it again just as a refresher. So let's get into Mars entering Libra. And here we have two songsters. You probably recognize John Lennon and Elvis, both of whom have Mars in Libra. Now, traditionally, Mars is in detriment in Libra. And this is because Mars is traditionally ruled, Aries and Scorpio are the mansions of Mars traditionally. Libra and Taurus are in opposition to their traditional mansions. And so it's seen as debilitated and weakened. In reality, this has a lot more implications for horary than it does in natal charts or in lived life. And the idea here is that when Mars is in Libra, it's answering to Venus. Whereas when Mars is in Aries or Scorpio, it's answering to itself, right? It's its own boss. And that's really where Mars likes to be. But Mars and Venus, the archetypical lovers, can actually work very well together. It's not that Mars isn't powerful in Venus, in Venus-ruled signs. Mars is powerful wherever it is. It's that its toolbox looks different. Its strategies, how it gets what it wants, how it exerts its will upon the world looks different when it's in Libra. So Libra Mars can be very effective, very seductive, and very persuasive. Another Libra Mars, right, is this lady, Margaret Thatcher. With Mars in Libra, you don't have the warrior so much as you have the negotiator, the deal maker, the lawyer, and the statesperson. In a time of war, Mars in Libra is not out on the field doing maneuvers per se, right? They're negotiating a hard peace. Mars in Libra persuades, partly through charm, partly through their verbal acuity. Mars and Libras tend to have excellent minds. They persuade others that it's in their best interest to help them. And that is a powerful, powerful gift, particularly for leaders. Mars and Libra are often managers. They're good at creating win-win situations, or at least the illusion of win-win. One of the key phrases for Mars in Libra is that it's the iron fist in a velvet glove. But make no mistake, an iron fist is still an iron fist. Libra is a cardinal sign. It is a mover and shaker. The cardinal signs begin each season. It's masculine, it's diurnal, and it's oriented towards fairness, balance, compromise, but with a Saturnian edge. Libras are no pushovers. Mars in Libra tends to be worldly, tasteful, and have friends in high places, at least value friends in high places. So Mars in Libra is answering to Venus and to Saturn. Saturn is that iron fist, because Saturn is exalted in Libra. Venus and Saturn, when paired together, they play the long game and they play to win. So when you hear that Mars is in its detriment in Libra, you have to understand that's speaking more about horary strengths, traditional strengths, which really play out in horary. But in reality, Mars can be incredibly effective in Libra. So, and no, my Mars is not in Libra. It is, however, in a Libra-ruled sign, Taurus. But that's a story for another time. Next, let's talk about Mercury in Virgo, trining Jupiter in Taurus. Now, you might think, oh, this sounds wonderful. Trines have a lot of promise, right? You have to work the trine to activate that promise, but they have a very positive connotation in astrology. They're of the nature of Venus. However, a trine is only so good as the planets that are activating it. Mercury, though strong in Virgo, it is in dignity in Virgo. It's retrograde, and this week moving into combustion. A planet that is retrograde is erratic, it is degraded, and it has a tendency to show its shadow side, right? Every planet has that polarity. I'm sorry, not every planet. Every sign has that polarity. The strengths and the challenges. When a planet is retrograde, it can lean into its challenges. And then when it's combust, it's the weakest that it is in its entire cycle. It is losing all agency. It is disappearing, literally being consumed by the sun. Jupiter, which is not particularly dignified in Taurus, has a tendency to inflate, exaggerate, amplify. And so when you have a degraded Mercury in trine, where the energies ostensibly flow smoothly between the two, you're going to have a tendency, there's going to be a tendency to overbook yourself. One of the hallmarks of a Mercury combust is complete nervous exhaustion, mental exhaustion, way too much on your plate. There may be a tendency to overanalyze a past situation, something that really belongs in the rear view. Since Mercury is retrograde, it's looking back, right? Over agonizing over the smallest mistake or perceived mistake, miscommunication, misfire. There can be exaggeration in the way that you speak. There can be over-promising at this time. So a degraded Mercury trining Jupiter is honestly something to be cautious about. That said, Venus this week is still applying to this square to Jupiter. And the reason it's lasting so long is that Venus is moving very slowly. By the end of the week, Venus will be stationing direct. The direct motion happens next week, but the station happens at the very, very end, beginning at the very end of this week. This will improve the state of Venus. Now, one of the things that Venus square Jupiter, particularly when Venus becomes a bit more, say, positive in her manifestation, retrograde is a degraded planet. It is the shadow side of the planet, tends to come out. I want to read to you from this book. It's a fun one, Money, How to Find It with Astrology by Lois Rodden. And she talks a little bit about Moon or Venus in Leo. Venus in Leo. With a need for a prestigious position of dignity, we like to display a grand generosity. We're often dramatically giving, even when we can't afford it, putting on a good show. However, we are also discreet. Our net worth is not open to discussion. We have a natural feel for managerial fields where we can express expertise and authority in business or some area that is our own kingdom. At times, we can be gamblers. We are proud of our ability to manage well, but want to be known for a broader area than that of commerce. Now, she talks about some of the themes with Venus in Leo that we've talked about before. And with the Venus squaring Jupiter, overspending, right? Putting on a good show, potentially even gambling. However, she also talks and begins the bit with Venus in Jupiter, well, Venus in Leo's innate generosity. Now, that is a wonderful energy to lean into during this time. There are things happening in the world that could really use some of that gorgeous, heartfelt generosity. So, Venus is still applying to square Jupiter. Venus is stationing direct. She will be out of the shadow of her retrograde October 7th. So September 3rd, beginning on the 2nd, but really September 3rd is when she stations, and then we'll be revisiting the degrees that she visited during her retrograde, but will be free of all that come October 7th, and things should really start improving in those Venusian areas of life. Now, the sun, when we talked about the sun in opposition to Saturn for last week, because we were feeling last week the waxing effects of it. This aspect perfects at 1:26 a.m. on the 27th. This is PST, Pacific time. And so this week, it's going to be waning, however, still present. And again, the sun in opposition to Saturn, it puts limits, important limits, but usually unwanted limits on our ego and our expression of self and ego in the world. It offers hard lessons. And one of them is that nobody, not even the sun, is above karmic law. Saturn represents karmic law. Some of the questions that this opposition offers to us to reflect on so that we can make the most of it, make the most of a tough situation. Saturn loves that. Have you done the work? Are you using your personal power correctly in the world? Now, you may encounter gatekeepers at this time. And those gatekeepers have important messages. The gates may open if you have done the work, if you have chosen the right path to express your authority and power in the world. However, they may not open. And that's a message that more needs to be done. Perhaps less ego and more effort, regardless, depending on where it is, in your chart. So to recap, last week we had the sun entering Virgo, which really kind of shifts the energetic template. And Mars entering Libra this week is another one of those shifts. You will really start to feel that things are changing. The story, it's a new narrative. Mercury is going to be applying to trine Jupiter, but it's a degraded Mercury. And you want to be careful of overworking yourself, nervous exhaustion, and really delving into the details of something that happened in the past. That can just be a trap. It can be an energetic trap, a real suck. Venus is still applying to that square to Jupiter. And it can be used in positive ways, philanthropy, sharing. But it can also manifest negatively because Venus is not in great shape and Jupiter doesn't have any special dignity either. However, this Venus retrograde period has a really important shift happening at the end of this week, and that is the station. And then it will begin its direct motion. And finally, we are dealing still with the sun in opposition to Saturn and however that has manifested. That will be breaking up over the course of this week, but you still may be feeling it on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. As always, please contact me at AngelaAlstonAstrology@gmail.com. I'm here if you want a natal reading, a horary question, or synastry, whatever's on your mind, whatever you could use some help with. And please feel free to visit my site. I have a blog. These videos are there. I appreciate you so much. And with that, I'm going to say, I hope you have a wonderful week.